Happy
Oh,
Thanksgiving Eve.
happy Thanksgiving. I was standing up. I didn't time that out right.
It could have been worse. You were wearing pants. Or
I
better.
was wearing
I don't
pants.
know. It's
You
very,
know,
it's
the
very,
first time we got together for a pre-Thanksgiving movie, I think was like 4 years ago, and it was Blood Feast.
there you go.
Ooh, nice. Blood Feast or Blood Freak?
Not Blood Feast.
Blood Freak, probably. Or Blood Rage?
Well,
Blood
Blood
Rage. I'm sorry. I took a
There you
dab before we started, folks.
Well, that's okay.
So
That's okay. Those are all good options, though. Those are
they are. It was Blood Rage, though.
okay.
Listen, there aren't too many Were Turkey movies, so Blood Freak would get my vote. But
Yes, yes.
Elvis impersonators with it's burned scars, and he turns into a turkey and attacks a bunch of ridiculous women. It's awesome.
Does it have to be a full moon to become a turkey?
I don't think the film has many rules.
Gotcha.
It's one of something weird put that out back in the day, didn't it, Dan?
Yes, something weird classic back in the day. I remember picking it up from Borders.
Yeah.
They always had their something weird section. So
What a weird period that was for home video when like everyone was buying stuff, so they were like, if it exists, we're gonna find a home for it on our retail shelf, and you could find something just bizarre left field out there.
Mike Rainey of Something Weird Video is responsible for a lot of things existing now that wouldn't have otherwise existed. So it's an unsung hero in the exploitation world.
Definitely between that later on it would be Vinegar Syndrome, but back in the day also Kim's Underground's collection just saved a bunch of stuff from absolute being lost forever. So that I mean, there is a lot of, and it's interesting. It's very much a New York culture thing to preserve things that, like, you get the idea that the left coast just wouldn't have preserved.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, there's that famous story that they were getting ready to bulldoze the warehouse or whatever, that they had a bunch of the H.G. Lewis stuff stored, and yeah, there's even video of some of that.
Yeah. So, gentlemen, we are watching tonight a film called Biozombie from Wilson Yip, who is probably best known to the mainstream for directing the Ip Man movies. But
Yes.
before his career in elevated martial arts films, he had a wonderful run in really cheap Hong Kong horror films. And they were really cheap, but they look great. With some incredible performances, especially in the one we're watching tonight. I like this film, and I love this film. This was in my top 25. But if you find his film Dial D for Demons, that's a lot of fun too. Just avoid Mummy aged 18 because that's not a lot of fun. But
Dial D for Demons is out on Blu-ray now.
Yeah, and it deserves to be.
Yeah,
it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, this is also a movie too that I mean, he is a huge director now. I mean, you mentioned the Yep Man movies, but Killzone, Flashpoint is kind of a go-to for Donnie Yen. And there's big stars in this, even at the time, like Jordan Chan. He was coming off Young and Dangerous, which was a huge film at that time. Sam Lee, who was in Made in Hong Kong, like these were big stars. Again, we've talked a lot about Category 3 titles and Anthony Wong, where he would do these grimy exploitation movies, but then be standing up winning an Oscar. It's insane.
And can we just talk for a moment? Like, I mean, this film has Angela Tong in it, who is one of, talk about someone you can't take your eyes off on the screen. Unbelievable. And that might be sexist as hell, but it's reality. So my curiosity here is, Jonathan, what experience have you had with Biozombie?
I showed up here after you told me we were watching Biozombie. I'll do you one better. I think aside from some Jackie Chan movies, I don't think oh, and Ebola Syndrome. I don't think I've watched much Chinese cinema.
You have an interesting opinion of it then. If seeing a bullet is
And some Jackie Chan movies.
yeah.
Well, you know what? Somewhere between the two, Biozombie probably falls.
I'm down.
Biozombie's a really fun film, though. That's the thing. Like, when you pitch this movie to someone, it inevitably leans into the fact that it has, like, on paper, this should be a Dawn of the Dead ripoff. It's a zombie movie in a shopping mall. And yet it's the furthest fucking thing from Dawn of the Dead you can imagine.
What year are we working with here?
98.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was really more inspired by Mr. Vampire, which
Yes.
if you're diving into Asian genre cinema, Mr. Vampire is kind of a must. And yeah, that's really the main influence for this movie. But you know, zombies mall, you can't take Dawn out of it.
Yeah. This is also a film that it takes self-awareness to a whole new level, as you'll discover in the opening scene. But throughout the film, there's a bunch of really knowing nods to this is a zombie film that knows the tropes. And in a way, it's really, really a good predecessor to Shaun of the Dead. In because it's about it's basically a bromance about two men who are best friends who are going through stuff.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out how their relationship really works. And both films are, and that's kind of cool. But this everything about this movie, from the ridiculous religious all over print on Woody Invincible's shirt to Jelly and Roll's like ongoing criticism of mall culture, it's all awesome. And that's not even mentioning Sushi Boy, who might be the coolest character in film history.
It is kind of like almost a living historical document now of mall culture, which is pretty much dead. Specifically, also in Hong Kong, because these arcade malls were all over the place, and from what I understand, there might still be some remnants, but basically they're all gone. So they were just everywhere all over Hong Kong, and it kind of takes me back to watch this movie.
I mean, what did your local mall look like in 1998? Still looking pretty nice.
Booming. Yeah, 98 booming. Yeah.
If you guys out there want to watch this film along with us, there are some easy ways to do it. One of which is just a YouTube search. You will find a print of the film. That's I think it's the second listing that's going to come up for most of your searches. And you could just turn on the closed captionings for English subtitles. So you don't have to just take our word for it. You can watch the film. Although, honestly, after you fall in love with it, go out and buy the Blu-ray of this thing.
Which is beautiful and should be on sale tomorrow at the time of this recording on Vinegar Syndrome, because I think this has been out long enough. So well worth it. That's what I'm watching.
Yeah, I have the French release that the transfer is originally from, but because I love this movie, I couldn't wait. I don't like to pay too much for movies. Everyone knows that I'm cheap about it, but this is one of those exceptions. I didn't want to take a chance of it not getting a U.S. buyer, and a lot of this stuff hasn't still, shockingly. So
there seems to be a lot of Asian stuff in general dropping now. Tons of Cat 3 titles, which must be selling well. So that's cool at least. But there's still a lot of stuff, a lot of Hong Kong stuff, a lot of just Asian stuff in general that we don't have.
All right. So you cats want to hit play in a few minutes, in a minute or so?
Absolutely.
Make sure our volume is down so we can actually have a stream. And tell me when you guys are ready, and I'll do a countdown here.
I'm ready.
I'm ready as well.
Okay. Let's go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hit play.
There we go.
Rolling.
So Maya Entertainment, a distributor of that got a lot of releases imported into America. I used to see this really cheesy intro a lot back in those days because I had a local, not really too local, but local enough comic book store that actually brought in imported DVDs and cheaply too. They weren't expensive. And I discovered a lot of these titles through them. They'd get stuff in, and if it was horror, I'd buy it because it was fairly cheap. And I couldn't get these titles anywhere else. I hadn't even heard of these titles because honestly, there wasn't like an internet movie database for international cinema. So a lot of it was, yeah, a lot of it was very, very, very blind buy. This is my happiest blind buy of the period.
You would always, go to a mall and there'd be that little kiosk Asian flicks that would have a lot of this stuff.
Mostly the action films, but there'd be a few horror titles in there too. I love this opening. The fact that so what's happening here is our two protagonists, Woody Invincible and Crazy Bee, are illegally recording a movie in the theaters, in the mall's theater. So we're watching their bootleg of the movie you're watching.
And then selling it in that mall. That's pretty gangster.
Why are my subtitles in Vietnamese?
Turn on the closed caption.
I did. Vietnamese auto-generated.
I don't know. I got him.
Oh, wow.
Auto-translate. It's an auto. Okay, so I see what it is.
I mean, you might be a little lost, but
there we go.
Yeah. So the other thing is I really love is that this film makes does not attempt to make our protagonists good guys. They're just relatable.
They're actually pretty big assholes, at least in the beginning of the film.
Well, kind of. That doesn't really change, though. I mean, it kind of does, but not really. And I love that. But everything. The husband here, the owner of the one shop's owner, who makes his wife work at his shop. He's such a slimy motherfucker, but he's so lovable for being such a flamboyant like piece of shit. I love this guy. So it's Crazy Bee's birthday. That's a plot point, and he has a thing for the shop owner's wife here.
Not hiding it too well.
No, and they're like to be clear, they want to come off as like hardcore gangsters, but at best they're petty criminals. So did why do you think something like this now? We got remakes of things like the big Japanese titles, but like a remake of Biozombie was never on the table.
I don't know if it really came down to the death of mall culture now. I mean, it certainly feels like it could have happened in the early 2000s still. So I don't know. I mean, this movie was modestly successful when it came out. It grew a cult following over the years. And I mean, you can see the American remake. I suppose it could still happen, but you'd have to set it in the 90s.
There's our girl Angela Tong, by the way, who intentionally hangs out with a girl who's less attractive than she is so that she gets more attention. I love these characters. They're all like, people who do this shit, right? And of course, Woody Invincible is completely infatuated, but he's going to act like the tough guy. So these characters, Angela Tong's character is Jelly and her friend is Rolls. So they're Jelly Rolls. And that's the thing, like the movie knows how silly it is, but it's kind of awesomely knowing about it.
Some people might be confused at what a VCD is, but
Big over there, man.
Still,
Big market over
still
there.
made.
Yeah, which is wild.
Well, they were cheap.
Yeah,
they
they
were
were
very, very cheap. Well, I mean, today, I mean, comparably, like today, the reason DVD is still the top selling video format in America is price.
Yeah.
No one wants to discuss it, but the fact is, the average American did not see a point of spending more money to watch movies by buying a Blu-ray player and buying a more expensive format. Well, that's even more true in the Far East.
That is true. I could argue that there's a big jump in quality from VCD to
That there's no argument there. VCD is pretty abysmal quality, but and I love this. They're about here to basically assault a customer into buying what they want. He's complaining that the quality is shit, because, so they're gonna harass him and pull a fake gun on him, which is it's like a video game gun.
Let's say it's attached to a cord.
Yeah, to make him do what they want him to do.
I didn't realize that Foster's was popular in China.
Oh shit! I never noticed that before.
Well, and the fact that they're fucking drinking at their job because they don't care. And they, by the way, they do not own this shop. That's a plot point too. Like, so they're like, you're gonna take Porto and leave. It's amazing. The movies, but this is the thing. Like a while back, I was on this show where we debated the merits of Dawn of the Dead versus Zombie, and I talked about the fact that I don't think the Dawn of the Dead characters are very good. I just don't. Like these Woody Invincible and Crazy Bee and Jelly and Rolls, Sushi Boy, who we've seen very briefly here. These are all already more well-developed characters than anything in Dawn of the Dead, and I know people go crazy about that, but it's fucking true. I know, Dan, you're split, but
I love them both. I can love two things.
So we're about to get a gratuitous, like ogling of mechanic balls scene. Which, again, that's not something you normally see in a film, is it? So what's happening here is Crazy Bee and Woody Invincible are trying to pick up their boss's car, because neither of them are, like, even own a car. They're dead broke, pretending to be gangsters.
Such an odd scene, but
it's so amazing. Like they're staring at his balls through his shorts. This is happening. Like as big
Are they
as
just infatuated with the size of this guy's nuts?
Yes.
It's just unusually giant balls.
Which on an Asian could be that big, man.
Which is literal, not which is literally their whole character, right? They're acting tough as fuck, but they're not. So
I don't know if they were so much and then they want to fight him after they just put a roach in his
until two actually tough guys show up, and then it's like not okay. And that's the thing. It's like, again, you wouldn't get a character like this in an American film. Like you wouldn't get like these deeply flawed but lovable characters for being like such shitheads.
Why is he wearing a rash guard?
There were so many great films being made at this time, just Japan and Hong Kong.
Thailand, there's a film called Ghost Train that I always push out to people that gets ignored. Nam Nok was actually out and was a huge success. That was the Thai ghost story. That's just
That was
it,
one of their biggest hits in
biggest. That's
yeah that
but that
decade.
yeah, but you don't get that having the effect of like Ringu on most of the world because it's such an insulated culture. Uh, Also, the film Morte More, which like a really disturbing film, like that's real horror. Like this, I always considered like this. It's in the genre because gallows humor is in the horror genre, but it's not. This isn't truly a horror film. This is a film to smile while watching. Real horror films are films that you don't smile at. I love this movie. Don't get me wrong, but there was stuff that was really coming out that was really disturbing. At the same time, it's not all one note.
There are a lot, not a lot, I wouldn't say, but there's some Asian zombie movies that if you did a top 50, a lot of them would be in there. I mean, One Cut of the Dead, of course, and Train to Busan.
Train to Busan. Where is that American film? Huh? Where's Last Train to New York? Where is that?
I believe that's dead. I don't think that's happening because I haven't heard an update in forever.
I saw a fucking trailer for that movie like forever ago.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, God, I didn't think I ever saw a trailer. Maybe a teaser trailer, but
I just think they know they have a problem.
it's
that is a bottle of goddamn Orbeez that they put like they've created a label for. That's amazing.
Lucozade was big in Britain. I know.
I love that like you have every group that could possibly be a problem represented here. This is in many ways like the best Return of the Living Dead sequel that was never made.
That I would have taken this over. Well, certainly the second film.
Yeah, I mean, I like the second film. Return of the Living Dead film is so frustrating to me because there's things I like about it a lot, but there's a lot that I don't. And then there's stuff that I used to like that I now find painful. And I don't like the third film. I know you guys do, but I don't.
I do like the third movie. But the second movie is weird to me because they were like, man, that first one was fun. You guys want to do that again?
For kids?
Yeah. I mean, that's probably why I like it so much. Like it does have that really fun, like family Gremlins feel to it.
But that's such a weird choice for I don't know. It does.
No, I'm not saying it's weird, but like
yeah.
I don't know. I think it's quirky.
It is. There's just stuff that doesn't work that as when I was younger worked. So that is an amazing shot, by the way, because if any other film would have given you the outside shot of the hit of the body against the car, just staying inside the car with our characters is just so cool. And then they do the Weekend at Bernie's thing, which is tremendous.
I'm surprised they haven't remade that movie.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's a real appetite for it, though.
Yeah, but I can totally see it on like who owns it.
There was I can't think off the top of my head who owns it, but a producer, they caught up to him on like a TMZ years ago. And he said they've been trying. I think you might be right. It's one of those things like there's a small
but like I could see it being like like they put it on Amazon Prime and it'd be one of those John Cena movies or some shit. Like, have you seen some of the garbage that they put out straight to the streaming sites, dude? You can make them just about anything.
What I would like to know is how you thought spending $250 million on Red One was a good idea.
They let The Rock have too much leash, like way too much leash.
He got 50 million of it, so
That is insane.
yeah,
Like,
that's what I'm saying. And it was the #1 movie in America, and it's a flop.
but you know what? He may this may be this may be towards the end. And he
it
knows
has
it.
to be getting there.
And he's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, let's just make this money. He's got that live action Moana movie coming out. That dude's still doing good. Never mind.
But do you think? I just think the whole Hollywood, like the whole way they make films, doesn't work anymore.
No, it doesn't.
Because
And they seem to not understand.
To get people into theaters for what they're selling, they have to spend way too much to make an actual profit. But yet, like, you do have the A24 method, which is okay, we're going to spend 20 million. Yeah, we'll be okay. I mean, Blum used to understand that. Now Blum's out, of course, just making crap. But that whole like a Roger Corman aspect of like make things for what they actually should cost to make, spend more on marketing than you ever did on making the film. It doesn't seem very difficult, but Hollywood can't do it. I mean, a mid-budget film is now like 80 million.
Yeah.
That's not smart.
Movies are now cheaper than ever to produce.
They should be.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the actual like work and technology behind it is, I mean, small children can edit these days, man.
Mm-hmm. And do.
Yeah.
So again, the movie is very self-aware. They have him playing a first-person shooter zombie film in the movie that's going to eventually get there. But notice how like we're following these two characters. Like this is not really a movie about zombies. In the same way that Shaun of the Dead is really not about zombies either. But it's about these two characters. We don't leave their side for a reason. Look, it's a Jaguar. That's not in the news today.
Jaguar.
So Sam Lee is primarily a comedic actor. I don't know that he's ever been better than this though. And it's interesting because a lot of the other things he's in, even the semi-sequel to this movie, BioCops, putting him front and center without someone to play off, it doesn't work as well. His stick doesn't work as well. But in this movie, because these two actors have each other, Jordan Chan is kind of playing the straight man at the same time because he doesn't, but also he's like, he's a fraud. He's bullshit incarnate. But these two actors together, because they have each other to play off like this, it really works.
Chinese people in cop uniforms do not look authoritative.
That's racist, Jonathan.
I don't think it's racist. I think it's just an observation.
Also, like, Sam Lee could honestly, he could be in a boy band, right? So he was ahead of the curve.
I think at this particular point, I think he's more or less age appropriate for the role.
Look at that! I want that phone now. I want that phone now.
I never saw that phone in yellow.
No, that's amazing.
I was at an antique shop a while back, and they had one of those old school phones, like the Paul Heyman phone that's like bigger than your head. And it wouldn't work, but I almost bought it just because I just thought it was cool.
I still have my first cell phone somewhere around here. It's big. It's real big and real heavy.
When did you grab it? Because those things were
94.
Might have come down a little bit, but I feel like 94, that's still an expensive phone.
I don't know. I think that issue is kind of conflated because I think I paid $100 for it then, which was $100 in '94. But today, to just buy an iPhone without just open market,
It's also not just a phone.
yeah,
Like it's actually the last thing that an iPhone does
yeah, it's
is
make
call
calls.
people. Yeah, like,
This is my device I use to control the temperature in my house and start my car and
yeah,
watch videos and call the dog.
but not actually talk to people
No.
conventionally. My
And
parents
that's
had bag cell phones. You remember those? It was like a entire phone in a bag.
I don't think I remember those.
Yeah, they had like a handset. They had like a sling. It was like a sling bag situation. You take it with you, throw it in the car.
so Hong Kong had this amazing ability to make their films have a look. Like the whole fucking region had a look to it. They weren't afraid of color, but it was color with texture. So it wasn't like an ultra bright cartoonish looking thing.
Mm.
Everything felt lived in and a little bit shadowy, but yet the colors are still popping. It's a very specific image. There's a lot of like teals and a lot of like I don't know, everything has a certain grayscale to it, but yet they're grayscale over bright colors. And I find the look fascinating. If something like Hard Boiled looks like this movie too, and it looks like a movie is what I'm getting at. Like movies used to look like something, like it had an artistic purpose.
What do you
Not
think
anymore.
that like blue light filter that's on like hard boiled?
I don't think it's a light. I think it's just that they have color corrected the film to mask the fact there's so many different shooting locations and conditions,
Hmm.
and they went towards that blue, but it comes off as a stylistic choice.
I mean,
I,
Ronnie, you did it to fucking Freddy versus Jason, and it looked fucking weird.
yeah, I mean, look, I know a lot of people in this community hate Freddy versus Jason.
I like it.
I can't muster up the hate for it because it does exactly what it promised to do.
Hmm.
And let's
It
be
was
honest, that whole
best.
concept shouldn't have worked.
No, I like the movie, but it's a weird looking fucking movie
It
from either
is.
series. Like it sticks out a lot that Ronnie Yu was, maybe not the Ronnie you knew from school, right? He wasn't from around here.
I'm glad
Ye-
about that though. I wish that any of the big franchises, except for the Chucky series, which did it with him, uh, I wish that they'd embrace the idea of taking someone exotic to do the properties because, frankly, the look of all the like post 1987 films in all those franchises is dog shit anyway.
Just go off the wall, Guy Madden, to do the new Friday the 13th.
I well, I always say like Albert Metzi, the Sicilian guy from Turkey, should be making the next Nightmare on Elm Street. If you don't see that, there's something wrong with you. Like you need someone with that much of a visual eye who can create a disturbing image. The original Nightmare on Elm Street, to me, the least scary thing in the Nightmare on Elm Street in the original is Freddy Krueger. It's having your friend show up in a body bag that's leaking eels into the high school floor. It's the sound of bleeding fucking farm animals invading your dreams. It's just the boiler room itself. Freddy is just a guy with fucking knives on his hands. That's just a
Yeah.
ghost. Whatever. But why did the sequels never try and do any of that shit again? The stuff that actually worked and made you fucking fear the nightmares. I never understood that.
Yeah.
Instead,
It went
we
a
got
weird
like Freddy
direction.
turned into a snake, yay! Or Freddy turned into a television. Jesus Christ! Look at that Leon the Professional poster behind him.
Oh, that's a interesting movie when you consider Luke Besson's past.
Luc Besson also is like, how crazy is it that he makes La Femme Nikita, which is I think one of the best action films ever made.
Yeah, I agree.
Then he makes Leon the Professional, which is great. It's just great, but I feel it's a little too long and a little bit one note compared to La Femme Nikita, which is kind of like pretty deep movie. Then he makes Fifth Element, whereas he goes completely pop, but like leans into it so much that you gotta love it. What a great beginning of a career that would stall out horrifically after.
Yeah, I remember going to see Fifth Element, always wondering what Bruce Willis kind of made of it, being on set for that. That was a pretty big leap for
So
him.
I saw Fifth Element when I was like really young. It came out, uh, and I loved it. And I saw Heavy Metal probably a decade later,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, "What the fuck?" Like they so much. It was so lifted from Heavy Metal.
Well, flying cars are, but I
The
mean,
flying cars, your main character is a fucking cabbie. The fucking aesthetic,
well, yeah, but I think there's other references though.
the multipass. Like it's just
Well, I think there's a lot of sci-fi tropes that were. I think they both go back to common ancestors. What I'm saying.
I'm just saying stylistically, like it basically looks like the Heavy Metal looks like the animated feature for
I wouldn't go that far.
Fifth. Oh yeah,
I
it's
would
that
say
egregious.
no, nah.
Yeah,
Good double feature for sure. And Gary Oldman,
sweet haircut.
Zorg.
No one else in the world could pull that role off. I've said that a million times. Anyone else would have lost. He had the tone of that movie. Actually, it's funny because that's a movie that describing the tone of that Fifth Element is tough.
It really is. It was so weird too. I mean, I loved it, but just seeing it in 97 at a time when there were a lot of misses as far as like sci-fi, big screen sci-fi movies go. I mean, this is a time where you're getting stuff like Wing Commander and Supernova and stuff like that, and just Fifth Element comes along, and I think it was one of those movies that made me realize, like, if it's not an American director, you usually will get something at least interesting.
Well, I think like part of it is that Luc Besson actually wanted to kind of represent all those, pulp stories from the 40s and 30s at the beginning of this, what we really call sci-fi today.
Mm.
But he also wanted to represent the serials. So the Flash Gordon thing is in there.
Yeah.
And even Jules Verne is in there with Journey to the Center of the Earth in many ways. It's a almost too ambitious film. Okay, so I'm just pointing out that so Sushi Boy, now we understand we know he has a thing for jelly, not for jelly, for rolls, but now he's getting insanely jealous because she's getting drunk with Woody Invincible.
Hey, Game Boy camera, man.
Yeah.
I had that exact same setup, same color, atomic purple Game Boy Color.
So they're gonna go fuck in the bathroom in a moment, and I think that's hilarious. And it's not planned; it's something that's gonna happen. Or at least they're gonna try. They'll be interrupted because it's a horror movie.
Poor Sushi Boy.
Sushi Boy it's an amazing character because nothing good happens for that character.
No, it's just a
No.
miserable 90 minutes for him.
I mean, to be fair, it's Angela Tong, right?
Wonder what she thinks of this one.
that always pisses me off about like the Asian stars that I like, that you never find out what they like, what they think of these movies, because there's no like interviews that are translated or anything. It's you're just left to your own imaginings.
Yeah, unless you get lucky, but it's usually only the director on the oh director usually on the commentaries for these. Or I know Wilson, the director, is fond of the movie. He's not fond of the makeup.
Yeah, I will say, like, if you saw this film back in the days when we were all very excited about imported movies kind of finding their way to our shores, because this is after really the bootleg trading scene. It was like you could legitimately get copies of things. This was a time period where it's like we were all getting excited about Asia because Asia had been an undiscovered country for most Americans. Um, Maybe in mid '80s, the Jackie Chan thing and then the John Woo thing in the early '90s, but that was about the extent of it for anyone. Like when suddenly like you're going to the wherever you bought them. For me, it was that Poker Industries, that comic book store, but for you, it might have been a mall kiosk, and you're seeing something like Thailand Dangerous, and you're like, what is this?
Yeah,
Or 1 a.m. I mean, these movies that like you knew absolutely nothing about, but you picked up that box, you turned it over, and you went, all I know is if I walk away from this, I may never see this thing again. So I need to do this right now.
yeah, that was always kind of my attitude because I mean I wasn't ordering online at that point. I didn't know how, so some of these weird random mall kiosks would be a lifesaver.
And it sucks that well, it doesn't suck because we didn't have we wouldn't have had the patience for it. But it sucks a little bit that we were only getting films from one country at a time, it seemed. Okay, so we're getting our Hong Kong features for these 3 years, 4 years, and then French Extreme is happening, so that's where the imports are coming from.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, stuff was happening, all over the world.
This is really just the very beginnings of DVD when this was made.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, so I've seen VHS copies of this in the wild, but in fact, Media Blasters put this out first, and everyone was buying it on DVD because the VHS, of course, no one was sure about compatibility, which actually wouldn't have been a problem, but everyone was worried. I love the fact that they're worried about his story, whether it's true or not, when the guy's bleeding from the neck. Like their concern is not for him at all.
I mean, being that he's bleeding out, I would take it that something I might not want to be there for, but
Something happened.
we'll have to do another movie that came out a year after this, Wild Zero, at
Oh, I
some
love
point.
Wild Zero.
Another that one is wild if you guys out there haven't sat down to watch it.
Oh yeah. Wild Zero is a trip.
And this is still like a period of time where we really weren't getting zombie movies. We were in a dead zone. This is 6 years, I believe, before Shaun of the Dead, and that there wasn't a whole lot happening in 1998. So
No, because the Dawn of the Dead remake is still 5 years off, right?
yeah, yeah, 5 years for that, I believe, or 6 years.
Which is the really thing that really revitalizes it all. And then you get that, you get Shaun of the Dead, then you get Resident Evil is in there somewhere.
Yeah, that it predates that as well.
Yeah. To me, though, the interesting thing is that there was not like zombies in the culture like as a constant, but this movie almost acts like it's a trope that we should all be just following wholesale. Like as if Dawn of the Dead and Zombie and Return of the Living Dead had just come out.
Yeah.
It's not treating this as nostalgia. It's treating this as like a current thing.
It's funny seeing Titanic. It just dropped.
Yeah.
Selling what I'm sure was a really horrific copy of that.
Do you remember the 2 VHS box of Titanic that was
Yeah.
everywhere?
In everybody's house.
Not mine. Not mine. Although I will say, here's a controversial take in this community. I think Titanic is a bad film. I do, but I think it's less bad in some ways than other Jim Cameron movies.
I'm kind of just more indifferent to it than anything. I mean, all of that best movie ever made stuff at the time, I was like, I don't know. This is kind of ridiculous to me. There is a TV movie that beat them to release. Oh God, Catherine Zeta-Jones was in it. I think it might be one of George C. Scott's last films, and there's shockingly, and I know they edited it out because people were really angry. There's a rape scene in that TV movie that kind of comes out of nowhere with Tim Curry. And I still remember to this day watching that thinking like, wow, it's a TV movie. What the hell's going on here?
I love the fact that Sushi Boy, like his depth perception is off. Because there's a whole thing in zombie movies where the zombies are like reaching and trying to grab people who are across rooms. They're doing this shit. So that like this movie just cleverly, they don't even make a big thing. It's just a quick scene to establish that zombies don't have depth perception.
Yeah.
That's so fucking cool. And it's a throwaway thing in this movie.
If you're not paying close attention, you may not pick up on it, but yeah.
It's so cool. I just love the characters. I love like the situations. I love how the movie this movie flies by. This is one of the least painful films to ever watch. It just, you turn it on, it feels like 10 minutes go by and you're watching the ending.
Well,
but again, these characters, man, they're so well defined considering like how little they have to work with. Really, I mean, they have a lot of screen time, but I mean, they're not given huge arcs. They're just given dialogue situations, and they play off each other for character development, which is brilliant. So many movies do not like mix who the characters talk to and interact with. This does. You get scenes where all these different characters interact and they have different dynamics with each other depending who they're with. And that's how life works, but movies don't usually work that way, honestly. So to give you an example, like where was the big in something like Star Wars, right? Where's the big scene between Leia and Chewbacca in the original trilogy?
Yeah, no, that's a good.
What is their relationship? No, we get Han and Chewie, right? But we don't get Chewie and Luke, right? We don't know what that would look like. This movie gives us all the main characters have their moments with each other, and they all react differently, and that's why they feel so well defined. Despite the fact that like this is a brisk movie. It's what 89 minutes. There shouldn't be enough room to be this good.
It goes by quite fast.
I don't know, that security guard might intimidate me.
I kind of wonder. I mean, I'm not if it somehow, some way had gotten a theatrical release in the U.S. in '98, if it would have had kind of more of a Shaun of the Dead following that's 20 years and strong at this point.
This is one of those movies every time I've ever shown someone, they fall in love with the movie. But it's just a little bit tough to get people to take that initial watch, and that's always the problem with either independent or foreign or old movies, which just tends to be where my love lies, you know. So I love this that they're outside this shop that does headshots, right? So they're selling photographs of, like, you'd go in there with people and you'd have photos taken. A business you could never do today. If you look closely, all the actors are represented on the wall, which I love that too. So it's like on one side of their shop, they're like selling VCDs, and on the other shop, they're taking photographs of people as portraits, or maybe that's a different business. It's very confusing.
That's some Titanic shots up there too.
Yeah. Well, this movie has a Titanic fixation, but I think they're trying to sell this idea of a love story that's not really here, which I kind of love too. So Sushi Boy is a zombie that doesn't want to be dead.
Or Bob of the film.
Exactly. But he gave her a gift. So that's the thing. Like when you watch it for the first time, you expect it to be something really gross, right? And it's not. And that's again another moment. It's like it's not a cheap gimmick. It's like, no, Sushi Boy is actually like really sweet.
They didn't go for the what's in the box gag.
He just happens to be a flesh eating zombie, but he's really sweet. So during this period, the one movie that's always been most frustrating to me, and I correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've gotten a Blu-ray release of this in America. Anyway, There's a Secret in My Soup.
Not officially, no.
Yeah, see it's a disturbing film, and it had lots of legal problems because the Hello Kitty company sued it because a major prop in the film is a Hello Kitty product, which apparently there you have to have permission to use. And they didn't have, so they had to blur it out in all prints. But that movie that's a disturbing one. And Angela Tong is in that movie. That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
In a much less glamorous role.
No, she's fantastic. I haven't seen her in anything new in a minute.
Television. She's been doing television over there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm trying to think the last movie I saw her in, but
I don't know if it was 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. She's in one of the anthologies back then as well.
Mm-hmm.
She had this minor wave of like horror hits as an actress, and then she went on to other things. And apparently she was like a singer dancer like before this. So
there's a lot of people like that. I'd like to, I don't know if they're fluent in English, but I'd love to interview them.
Oh yeah. I've always said that, like, I know it seems really obscure and like who would care, but the convention scene is so stale at this point with their guest lists.
But they only work with certain agents who have certain clients, and that's the problem.
But if Anthony Wong would come to America, I would go wherever that is.
I do feel like somebody like that. I'm not saying that he would have a Robert Englund line, but I do think you'd get some people coming out of the woodwork to meet him. Like you said, you'd go out of your way. It's like if I had a chance if I had a chance to meet Christopher Lee, all right, I'll get a plane ticket. I'll make it happen somehow.
Yeah. I I watch films from this era, and like America was in a bad place at this point because we're talking like the Scream era has begun, and everything looks like that. And I'm like trying to still,
Yeah,
I'm still trying to be a horror fan, but it's getting hard, right?
you had
And
to work at that time. Fangoria was
uh,
the Bible at that point to point you in the direction of some of these movies, which it took a while to get to them. I was pretty fortunate that I traveled a lot, so I got to get more opportunity to find some of this stuff. But um, no, Fangoria was key. 98 was rough, and I know some of you guys out there love that some of that wave of movies, but even if you love those movies, there just wasn't a lot of anything.
no,
We were,
and nothing that was out of that mold.
no, yeah, there wasn't a lot of variety at the time.
Yeah.
That's
That's why Blair Witch is so important. Like people who don't get Blair Witch don't understand where we were at.
yeah, no, it was and I wasn't that into Blair Witch at the time, to be perfectly honest, but at least it was a break from what we were getting post Scream Wave.
Well, you can't. There's no way to lump Blair Witch into the Scream wave. There's no way.
No.
It's Heather Donahue's out there in flannel and messy hair. This is anything but a freaking Maybelline commercial masquerading as a horror film. It's the opposite of that.
It's funny because for a minute she tried to kind of piggyback that late 90s teen comedy wave. I know she was in, I don't know, She's All That or one of those Freddie Prinze movies at the time, and it's just like, nope, I made my money. I'm just gonna fuck off and do other things. But she tried.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. Her legacy in film history is incredibly secure.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way that there's no way she could ever have anticipated. Blair Witch is one of those films that the West needed very badly. It was a reset point. And it didn't immediately have the effect it should have had, but I think long term, I think it does. I think that embracing the idea of a lo-fi aesthetic to horror films, as opposed to the ultra glossy stuff, which was Scream was doing.
What that movie did to me still to this day is more interesting than even the movie itself, because I can remember at the time, even like military friends of my dad that you would think would know better because I knew I was the horror fan, and they'd just be like, man, that's that one that's real, isn't it? And like, yeah, they kill them on screen. It's wild. But I don't know. I liked that people could be gullible like that at the time. There's something about it. Although I say it still can't happen. I mean, Megan is Missing had people on TikTok convinced that they were watching a real snuff movie. So
Yeah, I think that as long as you don't put out a lot of information about what you're doing, you could still do it.
yeah.
As long as it's kind of a mystery, you could still do it. Harder, but I think it could be done.
King Dangerous brings up funny games in the chat. That's certainly, yeah, something that we had going on outside of America.
And in many ways, that's where I still feel the exciting stuff is still outside of America. Every once in a while, something comes out that really makes me, I don't know, gives me hope. But mostly inside the horror genre in particular.
It's more of a case, I think, right now of it not being embraced like it should, but some of that's just an attention span thing. People just don't champion stuff like they should. Which is why, I'll always have a handful of movies each year that I'm sure people get sick of me bringing up, but you kind of have to do that to keep it in the public conscious. Sometimes they come out, people love it for a few weeks, and then it's just, out and just gone.
Well, that's the speed of things too, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're also past the era when like whatever's new on Shutter this week is what everyone gloms towards. It's more diversified now, and our conversations about new films tend to be theatrical things and legacy things, and that's not a really healthy place to be.
Yeah.
So I'll say this: like, the makeup can be easily faulted in this movie, but are we pretending that that wasn't true of most of the Italian cannibal zombie movies of the 70s? I mean, Burial Ground has much worse makeup than this, whereas you
Oh,
can see the edges of the makeup, the color matting doesn't even work.
absolutely. I mean, uh, sometimes the flaws kind of make it, though. I mean, there's some classic zombie movies that you could criticize some of the makeup.
One in particular.
Oh yeah.
I always love this moment in this movie. This is such a weird thing. Like this security guard has been nothing but like trying to get Woody invincible, and he has him now, handcuffed in his office. But Woody's like, "Can I have a smoke?" And the cop's like, "Yeah, whatever." Because this is what happens in real life. I don't know if you've spent a lot of time like in retail. I've seen enough of my cases where unfortunately people in uniform have to be brought in, and they're still just real people.
Oh yeah.
And you don't get that in movies, really. You don't get those moments where people are just allowed, "Hey, we're on opposite sides of thing, but we're gonna be people."
Yeah.
I think Michael Mann's Heat is a movie that does that well. Like, everyone talks about the diner scene, and there's a reason, because you never get that scene of just two people on opposite sides just explaining their position to each other.
Heat's amazing. Do you think they're going to adapt that new book?
Yeah, I would think at some point, right? They have to.
I'm a little surprised it hasn't been announced at this point, but
Well, I mean, the movie business is so slow at this point with actually adaptations. They're better when it's an original property where they can just throw it into production.
ooh.
The idea of mall security guys having guns is. I'm not saying
Probably,
it's inaccurate. I'm just saying that's a thing.
maybe it's just me, but I don't really recall mall security. I've been a lot of places, but I don't recall guns
No.
on most of those guys. I mean, I feel like I've probably been somewhere where they did, but even back in the 90s, that's one thing I don't really have any memory of. Do you remember seeing a guy get tackled by the oldest mall security guy I've ever seen running out of an Old Navy? Just a pile of clothes, and that dude just fucking leveled him.
Okay, we got to talk about Old Navy for a second because this is a pet peeve of mine. Who's naming
I
these stores? Like, throughout history, who's naming these stores? Old Navy is such a weird thing. Like, who are you guys trying to attract by Old Navy? It
I
doesn't
never
make
got
sense.
it.
And it's like, well, the worst for me, it was always the store for young girls called Wet Seal.
Oh, yeah.
Who's that gonna appeal to?
Something's lost in translation there or something. I don't know.
Someone
That's
had an idea, and they were like the son of the company president or something, so they just went with it.
I go to the mall now and I'm just like everything that I used to enjoy is just like long gone.
Oh yeah, there's no stores for men anymore, right?
Yeah, it's all, if you're lucky, you still have a fun mall, which we do. It's got the medieval times, and we still have Books a Million, and Barnes and Noble sometimes attached, but pretty much everything else is gone. Even FYE's not FYE anymore.
No. Do you remember when Books a Million tried to be hip and call themselves BAM?
Yeah.
It's kind of the Kentucky Fried Chicken KFC thing, but even worse.
Some of them have gotten better with their horror sections at the very least. Barnes and Noble in particular. At
Depending on the
least,
manager or the location, yeah.
Yeah, some better than others, but there's actually a few really cool Barnes and Nobles in the Georgia area.
Yeah, so there's one out near Plainfield that is the new concept stores, which are what they're all going to look like in the future. It is phenomenal. It's a
That's
great
cool.
it's a great new direction for Barnes. It's very open, it's very modern, but it feels like a bookstore, and it is a bookstore, by the way. Like
Yeah.
all the other shit. Well, they still have a coffee shop, but all the other shit is gone. It's a
Mhm.
bookstore again,
That's
and
cool.
it's kind of glorious.
I remember just throughout the years, always, I talk to like some of the managers and workers. I'm like, why no like horror section? And every time I'd just be like, yeah, I don't know. Like we get asked all the time.
I think the reality is just that for a long time it was Stephen King was the only thing that was selling. So what was the
Yeah.
point? Or that was the perception anyway. But again, if you don't have a horror section, then people aren't going to branch out from the big name that they recognize because they'd have to go
Yeah.
through the whole fiction section just to pick up every title to see if maybe it's a horror novel. It's not like the old days where the marketing said horror in big letters on the spine. That's
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah. Another thing I don't get. There's so much stuff out there that I know would blow up if they would just get some eyeballs on it, but it's kind of like not even pushing Paul Tremblay on Knock at the Door or whatever they called it. Yeah, Knock at the Door was the movie. Um,
Cabinet at the
I'm
end
like,
of the world.
yeah, and I'm just like, why wouldn't you at least attempt? He's not maybe my first choice to be the guy, but why not? That thing blows up. Paul Tremblay's got a lot of books out there that you can adapt, some short stories. That's actually not the one that I would have picked for him, but
Especially if you're going to change the ending anyway.
yeah.
I just don't understand that choice. But whatever. Doesn't listen, I understand it. Like M. Night Shyamalan says, I want to make your book into a film. You know it's going to get onto screens. You know people are going to actually see it. You don't say no to that. But by the same rate, it's almost a disservice because he can't leave it alone. He has to make it a M. Night Shyamalan thing.
Yeah.
I've always
Oof.
said to my, I've always said
Trap.
like, I'm never going to see that. But I, I've always said like the thing that would be most challenging to me if someone wanted to adapt my work, it wouldn't be if they hired some journeyman like um, hack director. That's fine. I know what I can do emotionally with that. But if like one of my heroes was attached to adapt me, a David Cronenberg or a David Lynch, I'd get really scared because they couldn't leave my work as is. It wouldn't make sense for them to do it. But the nature of changing something fundamentally from what it is into something else, that's scary to me. So
Would you?
maybe you have a Barry Gifford situation, whereas it makes sense because they work together, but
Yeah.
I don't know. So again, a self-aware movie. Woody Invincible now has to carry around a freaking monitor the whole time. He sells VCDs. Get what is happening? It's awesome.
Maybe we'll get Wilson to direct Blue Eel. That might be interesting.
I'm not sure that's happening. More so than Bleak December. Like that's the one that who's taking that fucking thing on?
I could see it in A24 neon. Honestly, I could. I don't think it's impossible. There's some stuff I would look at on my shelves, and I'm like, that's never gonna fucking happen. But I could see it. I could see it happening. It's just so many things, though. I mean, Drive-In, Joe Lansdale. Like, how has that not been adapted? It just seems like a no-brainer. Like,
Oh
it's
my God! Here's the thing: if you're Shutter and you have the ability to give distribution to something, that's the kind of no risk title. You find an independent production house, give it to Ghost House or something like that. That's where it has Sony's Screen Gem money behind it. Produce it for
yeah,
$3 million. You're gonna that the math's gonna be there between international at the streaming service and whatever physical you put into play. It's gonna be there for a title like that, but it doesn't happen. So
I think I don't know what ridiculous remake got announced, but I was watching Final Guys with Hunter Shea, Chad Lutsky, and maybe it was like Faces of Death or something like why are we remaking this? And they're just sitting there. It's like, we got about 100 stories between the four of us. And it's like, no, unique stories. And it's like, yeah, no, let's try and remake Faces of Death with somebody from Euphoria, I believe, is in there. Stranger Things, that I think is starring in that one.
that's the other thing. Is like, can we please have horror movies for adults again at some point in America?
I'm really pushing Nosferatu hard because I think it's going to be something special from what I'm hearing, and I'm just worried. I just don't think Christmas Day. I just don't know.
My thing is like, I know what needs to happen with that movie, and I don't know. Are they going to be so worried about offending the sensibilities of classic film fans that I don't know. I in my heart, I believe I'm going to enjoy it a lot more than I like the Herzog film. Will I like it more than the original? Well, I'm not a huge silent guy. Obviously, that's a really iconic film. I did see it theatrically with a live orchestra a couple of years back, and it was a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be the best version of Nosferatu? Probably, right? But
It will be for a lot of people. I mean, Eggers, I don't think I could come up with somebody better to be doing that. So it's it feels can't miss. I just worry. I mean, last Voyage of the Demeters box office,
way
and
better film than it should have been.
yeah, I like that one quite a bit. I thought that was very good, but nobody went out for it. So I'm not sure with Nosferatu. I mean, I know Eggers has his fans, and I mean, I'm really hoping I can make it. If not Christmas night, I'm gonna go the next day because it's just, I don't know. I'd like to see that one blow up. I really would.
I I don't know. I feel like if it's too geared towards adults and serious sensibilities, it's not going to have the excitement for the 16-year-olds of a Scream movie or whatever. That's going to be a little bit dangerous for it. It might just be self-limiting. It might do really well for a serious R-rated horror film, but what does that even mean?
Yeah.
What's
Well,
what's the biggest selling serious horror movie ever?
yeah, that's true.
But again, who cares? Like, this stuff gets made, and that's a benefit to the genre. If it would be great if it was really wildly successful, because then more things would be made like it, or at least with its tenor. But it's better that it gets made than not.
If nothing else, maybe the popcorn bucket will will sell the movie.
I'm so glad theaters are doing shit like that, because I've been screaming for years they need to have a freaking gift shop in every theater.
That last Dune movie, that I went in opening night, maybe like the second screening, that on that Thursday, I guess it was. And I got the popcorn bucket. On the way out, the guy was telling me it's like they're gone. They're gone. It's wild. And then, the Romulus ones were just selling insane. More merch. Like you can draw these people in just to buy the buckets.
I just feel like the problem with movies is they're expensive for what they are, and there's a generation that don't want to go to begin with. So how do they, with less people going, still make a profit so the theater can remain open? Well, it's not by raising prices of the tickets, because then less of us are going to go, but by
Mhm.
providing like other goods and services. So an example, I mean, I think it's great that they have full kitchens now in a lot of cases. That's really smart. But I think that combo tickets where your movie ticket, a drink, and a small popcorn are available at a price point that's less expensive than if you did it separately, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But I also feel like a lot of this stuff writes itself. Like you put if one of those horrific new Halloween films comes out, you need to sell the frickin' soundtrack on vinyl in the movie theater lobby. You need to do that.
Yeah, I don't get, like, where are t-shirts, buttons, stickers, stuff that does not cost anything to produce. I just don't understand how that hasn't happened. I know certain things, maybe it's like, well, action figures, there's a little bit more to that, but I mean, t-shirts, it that's not expensive, and I guarantee you get some. I mean, Wicked right now probably going to be one of the biggest hits of the year. Well, kids coming out, or teen girls coming out of that, and you have Wicked, whatever. Like, you'd make a fortune on that right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'll never see Wicked, but I I don't have a problem with things being out there that make a lot of money, even if they're not something I enjoy. I'm never going to bitch about that because I
Something
want,
needs to, yeah.
yeah, something needs to make the money. Um, I just hope that eventually theaters get the message that it's not a one thing. They're not providing one service. I think that there's an open market when you have 18 fucking screens and four movies that are actually selling tickets well. You can afford to get a creative. I don't understand why on premiere night of a big television show returning, that first episode isn't in the movie theater. I don't understand why major sporting events aren't in movie theaters as simulcasts on the big screen. I just don't understand it.
They were doing that a little bit for some wrestling pay-per-views for a while, and it's fun. Like, you go there and it's close to being like at an event. There's just so much that the theaters can do.
You, you,
Even,
you know the biggest one, the one that is incomprehensible that they don't do, the Academy
oh,
Awards.
oh, absolutely. You have film fans that'll come in for that. I mean, I would, I'm the type of guy that would go, actually maybe have some conversations with the people that saw the Polish film that's blowing up for, best foreign film.
I don't know. I think there's opportunities for theaters to do something,
I
be
think
to stay
more
relevant.
even William Castle type gimmicks that, would be funny. I know there's a buzzer on the bottom of the seat, maybe doesn't play as well now as it did back then, but um just something, even the aesthetic of it. Like, we did Creature from Black Lake on Dead
Mhm,
End Drive-In, and the theaters back then would hang like the moss and everything to sort of
mhm.
set the mood. And most of that doesn't really cost a ton of money to do that.
I don't know. I feel like we're pretending that everything's just going to be okay, and I don't think that's true. I ran record stores for the first 13 years of my management life, right?
Mhm.
And everyone said, believe me, everyone said, "Oh, this Napster thing is not going to be the portent of anything bad. It's just going to be a small part of the business. It's going to be like those 12 for a penny music clubs where they send it to you in the mail. It's not going to affect you guys. Don't worry." Well, it did.
Oh yeah,
Spoilers. It decimated an industry,
killed
and
music. Yeah,
I think that we run the real chance if we lose theaters because we don't look forward. There's going to be a heavy price to pay. Music itself is in a worse place without a retail base. And it might not dollar per dollar look like that, but I'm telling you, culturally, every 16 to 19-year-old, the first question you'd ask when you met someone was, "What do you listen to?"
yeah,
That's completely dead now. And we lost that because there wasn't those social places to meet. Movies need theaters for that reason. To normalize our fixations and to give us people to meet because we share interests.
yeah. No, I agree. There's a lot more that you can do with this space at this point. I mean, even some of the ones that have arcades and everything, I'm like, I feel like you can make enough room for just a tiny merch stand. Hell, just the box office itself, because they don't really have that anymore. My
Mhm.
AMC that I go to, that's empty. Go in there, you put some shirts up. Nobody's going there really to look at the movie times anymore. They've all got it on their phone. So go in there, have some t-shirts up, koozies, whatever. Like, I mean, all of that stuff is so cheap to produce. And look at the mania that these popcorn buckets are stirring up. I mean, you've got the Dune popcorn bucket popping up on stuff like South Park and Saturday Night Live. Like, you can draw people in there, and hey, maybe they'll just buy the bucket. And that's fine. That's revenue for the theater.
Yep. So, I mean, we haven't talked about this movie for a while now. I'll point out that like the zombies here are interesting because they're not like the dead serious Zack Snyder run as fast as you can tear you apart
Mhm.
a body pile type of zombies. They're meant to have both a serious side and a comedic side to them. But it's interesting, like because we care about these characters, they don't have to be super serious, right?
Yeah, no, you still want to see them make it out. Oh, dick move.
Out literally throws his wife to her death, basically. Hey, eat her. And it doesn't even help him.
I was gonna say there was really no reason whatsoever to do
No.
it at that point. It's kind of hard. There's no Hallmark card for for what he just did.
No. Of course, this is going to give Crazy B his opportunity to actually get kissed on his birthday, which is his whole goal. He wants to see a movie with a girl on his birthday. And of course, he's not going to truly get that opportunity, but I love the fact that this douchebag hides behind the Coke machine so much. So one of my complaints about Dawn of the Dead is always that people talk about it having this social commentary, but when you ask them, okay, what's it saying? They come up with like, oh, consumerism makes us into zombies. And I'm like, is that it? And yeah, it is it. But this movie is doing this whole thing about how like cultural norms surrounding really extraordinarily strange things have become like normalized. So yeah, hiding behind a Coke machine is a better metaphor than Dawn of the Dead ever came up with. These scenes of these characters and they're having their like video game like
that
stats come up.
this was ripped off a lot. I mean, House of the
Yeah.
Dead. There's a lot of people that borrowed from this.
But it weaponizes it in this movie because it's like you're supposed to, okay, we're gonna have fun with it. And then when this film decides to get tragic because it doesn't play out the way it doesn't become a Resident Evil movie, right?
No, some of you watching this for the first time, the ending is not what you would expect.
Well, even just a few minutes, things are going to take a very dark turn that you
Yeah.
wouldn't expect from a film that's willing to be as goofy as it is. But I love this. Like, he's hiding behind consumerism. He's a store owner. Like, the biggest symbol of consumerism is Coca-Cola, right? Right
Oh,
back to back to Dr. Strangelove. And it's just it's so cool. But by the same rate, they're being playful about it. They're not saying like consumerism did this, even though, like, there's also subliminally reminding us that the pathogen hides inside cola bottles. But it's just it's nuanced, and it's smart, and it's cool, and it's at the same time it's fun and escapist. And yeah, I can see the edge of the makeup there, but it doesn't matter.
no, it really doesn't. I mean, I can overlook a lot if the movie's just fun.
This is wonderful Scooby-Doo moment where people are popping out of all doors and hitting them with oversized wrenches. I think a power drill might be the worst zombie killing weapon possible.
Yeah, you need something that you can,
Stay a distance with, right?
yeah, keep distance and not get stuck in them. There's a lot, like, at this point in Walking Dead, I'm just like, we're 20 years into this. Like, there would be nothing left. They would be soup. It's a lot of overlooking of things that you have to do in zombie movies. I know we are finally getting 20 28 years later, is it? Or
Oh yay! I can hate that movie too.
I think we're getting another Resident Evil too. I actually didn't mind the last one. I was like, at least they're trying to kind of make this a horror movie again.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't hate the Resident Evil series for what it is, which is like increasingly just unhinged films.
Mhm.
I actually think the first two are the weakest of that series simply because they're actually kind of trying to do something, whereas in the later films, they're like, "What's the wildest shit I can do?" I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
I kind of enjoyed them through the third one, I guess. The third one, you start to see like it's becoming something else.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, if you're it's a video game adaptation, go crazy.
It's a busy not this week, but the following week for movies. We got that new Nick Frost's film Getaway that looks pretty funny. Werewolves, which I'm really curious to see that.
Hope that does well. I'm serious
I
though. I hope that does well because
Yeah, yeah.
that Wolfman film looks atrocious.
I can't yeah, I'm very curious to see that. It doesn't look, it's not a great trailer. I'm gonna reserve judgment because you never know, but I think it's interesting. It'd be interesting to me if Werewolves is the one that actually kind of does some business, because that actually looks like it's a lot of fun.
At least has a lot of ambition to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frank Grillo is one of those guys, like, should be a bigger action star if we still had action stars.
I will. Yeah, I will never understand why like the Expendables thing didn't extend to the next generation of actors. It
Just
doesn't make sense.
I mean, and I say, I mean, Frank Grillo is like 56. I mean, he's not a
Yeah, but
young
compared to
man.
the other guys, come on.
Yeah, no, we're getting into, I mean, some of them are coming up on 80. So,
It's ludicrous.
yeah, it really is. But, we still have our Frank Grillos and Michael Jai Whites that do occasionally put out something really good. Sorry about my dog. Hey, hey, hey.
So Crazy Bee has been bitten.
Yes.
And we get this scene in a lot of zombie movies, whereas like a character we care about is slowly succumbing. And there's a lot of different approaches. Like Return of the Living Dead does it comedically, but yet still weirdly tragically. Dawn of the Dead tries to take it dead serious. Here, it has this weird balance because the movie just went from being kind of a fun zombie movie, and then a bunch of bad shit just happened in quick succession to these characters we care about, and it's about to get really tragic. There's still going to be jokes, but it's that moment where you like, I want to go back to when all these characters were still around.
I think that's what makes it memorable. That you can have this movie. We're having a gag about a on a guy's balls, and then it can still kind of tug at the heartstrings at the end.
Yeah. It's a scene like they're holding their friend who's going to die and turn into a zombie, and he's about to make a joke about her breasts. But it's still like the joke is it's almost not funny because the situation is so horrible. But it's pointing out like, okay, you wanted a fun zombie movie, right? Well, here's the cost of it. All he wanted was to watch a movie with a girl on his birthday. Instead, he's in the zombie movie.
Hey, stop it. Really good scene too. I mean, you can, if this is your first exposure to some of these actors, I mean, they're really, really good dramatic actors.
I also feel like you just don't get this kind of scene. Whereas again, this is a film about these two. It's the two guys. It's not about her. This is a film about these two men and their relationship, and it's coming to an end. And they're not afraid to have like these supposed tough guys. He's holding his friend as this friend is going to die. I just don't see horror movies with this kind of ambition emotionally. Maybe that's why something like Train to Busan really plays, because it does try and have emotion attached.
Yeah.
And obviously that movie really succeeds, mostly because we're so complicit in the. Actually, I like that whole trilogy. I think is brilliant. I know that I might be in the minority on that, but I
the
love
anime
that.
is good too.
Yeah, well, I'm including that as the second film. Yeah.
Peninsula and the anime. I can't remember if the anime came before Peninsula, but it. And I'm not an anime guy, but I was like, I was really impressed.
No,
by
it's
that.
good. It's really, really good. And it manages to get all those emotional chords in there again. And I think Peninsula gets I understand it's not Train to Busan, which okay, nothing is.
Beautiful looking movie though. Like the visuals in that are pretty insane. It's hard to. Train to Busan is just one where just everything hit. I mean, it was perfect. So a sequel was always going to be hard, but I do like Peninsula. I think it's quite solid.
If George Romero had made Peninsula at some point in his career, we'd be thinking of it as one of the classic Romero zombie films.
Oh yeah. I don't think the bar was necessarily super high. I mean, you would kind of think it would be, but I think a lot of people were willing to forgive a lot from him. Not Diary of the Dead, but
I saw Peninsula in the Palisade Park Ball AMC.
oh,
And
nice.
the audience didn't know what to make of it because apparently they didn't know it was attached to anything. And I felt like that kind of like tepid reaction was really depressing. Then I went home and like people online were just brutally in lockstep about like, oh, well, this sucks. It's awful. And I'm like, it doesn't suck. It might not be Train to Busan, but it does not suck.
No. I might even prefer the anime a little bit, but it's still a very good movie. It's a solid franchise. I don't know what the American one looks like. I mean, I don't know.
Soul Station is really, really good, but I'm glad it was not made live action because I don't know if it would play as well live action. So
Probably.
I'm glad they exist exactly as they exist. It's a great trilogy. We should be so lucky normally. And again, in a couple of years, Shaun of the Dead would do this whole "you got to kill your mother" thing, whereas it's now you got to kill your best friend in this film. I love Shaun of the Dead, but I these characters to me are just much closer to my heart.
If you guys out there are also looking for other Asian zombie films, I referenced a few earlier, but I mean, again, Wild Zero is an experience if you haven't seen it from '99. Tetsuro Takuchi directed that one. One Cut of the Dead, which I know a lot of you did see. Great.
Stacy.
Stacy's really good too. That's actually one of the out of a lot of those is not talked about much as well, and it should be seen. Hashtag Alive, more recent one. I think that one's quite good. Tokyo Zombie, Zombie for Sale. Um, not all necessarily classics, but something like Junk, which is also a little bit after this film, but
And much more recently, Odd Family, which is unofficially part of this franchise. Because so this is a weird franchise. We should discuss it. There is a sequel, sort of, to this called BioCops. It's not very good.
yeah, I was gonna say I almost forget that it exists. I saw it once.
And then Odd Family, which came out just a couple of years ago, is a spiritual sequel. It's not officially attached, but it does it kind of blatantly puts itself in the franchise, even though it's not official.
Mhm.
And that's actually a really great film. If I know the title doesn't sound like a zombie movie, but it completely 100% is.
Yeah. Another cool moment here.
Yeah. It's wonderful how like things can be heartwarming and disquieting.
Yeah.
How cool is that? I say it almost every time we talk, but like the reason I love movies is because they can make me feel things that I can't feel in my everyday life because I'm not in
Right.
these situations. These heightened emotions that are, or complex emotions, or emotions that are just almost contrary to what you think you should feel, that movies can evoke. Um, this movie does a lot of that. There's certain movies that are one note pretty much, but it really works for me. Something like the original Alien,
Mhm.
which I love. That's in my top 25 as well. It's higher than this film in my top 25, but it is pretty one note when you get down to it.
Oh yeah.
But it does what it does really well, and Alien makes me feel a certain kind of paranoia. This movie's a different animal. This movie is the magical movie that can take you through a bunch of different emotions, but still feel like one piece of art.
And that dramatic 180 and making that work. That's not easy to do.
It's all characters. I
Yeah.
think if the characters weren't written as well, I was talking before about like how the different characters all have a chance to interact with each other in different configurations. That's important, but it's also from a writing standpoint really tricky. You actually have to build characters well enough to do that. Otherwise, you're not going to build characters. You're just going to have various people spouting exposition at each other, and that won't create that sense of connection that this movie needs. Here's another moment, like they roll up and Sushi Boy's in the way, and we actually liked Sushi Boy, so they're like arguing about what to do here. He saves them.
Yeah.
It's such a cool. You couldn't go there in a typical film. You just couldn't.
Dirk is in the chat. He saw Game Over for the first time.
Now, Game Over is much higher on the top 25. Game Over is one of my absolute favorite films. So I'm really glad that you dug it, my man. Now you have permission to watch the autopsy.
Yeah, there's stuff like that I really wonder in like 20, 30 years, if it really finds a big audience outside of the home country. Because I think the more people that watch it, I think they will see something in it. Something like Biozombie. I mean, the title and everything, I think people have something very specific in their head, and there's just so much more to it, but it's a hard sell.
JG Michael is saying, mentioning Eternal Evil of Asia. I bought that as a VCD, and besides the literal dickhead in the movie, the Invisible Man, it's a ghost thing, but that like very inappropriate sex scene, unbelievable, hard to describe. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Eternal Evil of Asia. Does that have a proper release here?
Again, proper no. I mean, you can get that movie, but a lot is getting grabbed up. There's more Asian stuff, not just even in the horror genre, that's getting announced now that than ever before. There's a lot of great J horror stuff from that boom that's still not out on Blu-ray. I mean, look at the Tartan Asian Extreme line.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of good stuff there.
How about a restored 3 Extremes? When's that coming?
I don't know. You know what? The digital of that, I don't even think is in HD. So
true.
Yeah, it's.
Did that? What's the movie with the girl with the fish hooks? I'm trying to remember the title.
Believe it or not, there's a few different things that kind of boy.
Okay, so we're to the heartbreaking ending here.
Yes, such a good ending too. I mean, you would not expect it, and
yeah. So I mean, the thing is, it's kind of the modern equivalent of Ben getting shot in the head by the mob in Night of the Living Dead. You don't need the townspeople. Like the end of Night of the Living Dead to break down things for people. Like that is basically the townspeople from Frankenstein showing up but now they have rifles instead of, torches. And here you don't need any of that anymore. And the tragedy is inevitable. Again, if consumerism is the villain, then the only way to end this thing is by drinking a cola, realizing you're doomed.
Yeah, it's very. You wouldn't expect a nihilistic ending like that, but it's. I love that. I love movies that can switch tones that hard.
It's kind of like, to me, the only good thing really in The Mist is the ending. And I know some people just hate the ending, but I think the Mist is pretty standard fare. It's not nowhere near as good as the novella that it's based on. And then that ending comes, and because it's so bleak and bleaker than anything in the book, to me, that's the strongest possible part of it.
Oh, it's one of the greatest endings too. I mean, especially when he sees her on the convoy and everything, and that realization hits him. Thomas Jane is a very underrated actor.
So here we go. Do we think it'll implode over the next 10 years? I think there's two possible paths. One is that they finally figure out they're never going to make a dime off of these $200 million productions and stop that shit. Or I think movie making has become so regional again that it's almost like the early 70s. And Hollywood is going to produce their spectacles, and the rest of us are going to go see the little regional films.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not necessarily a bad scenario, but I think, I mean, number one, I think, woke Hollywood, if you will, is kind of already imploded. I think they know there's certain things now that doesn't play, and they're starting to make that turn. But I don't I don't know. I think the indies are going to start to really take over, because I talked about it briefly at the beginning of the show, but you look at something like Red One, a movie about rescuing Santa Claus, $250 million. I mean, that movie, I think it made 32 or 33 million the opening weekend. I would consider that good for the movie, but like $250 million. What did you think it was going to make? It was never going to be much more than 32, 33 million dollars. I don't understand the decision making that goes into that. I really don't. I mean, it's
It's the same decision making that in the heat of a bidding war makes people spend, money on an Exorcist, license that could never be made back.
yeah, I don't.
It-
The amount of stuff that you could have produced for $400 million in the horror genre,
So, but
you know.
also just so this is my big pet peeve with Hollywood at the moment is that, and earlier I referenced when we start making horror movies for adults again. This is what I mean, like they don't understand The Exorcist. Why would you pay that kind of money when you don't understand the property? The Exorcist is about a little girl who has undergone abuse. Everything leads out from that. They'll
Yeah,
never make that movie again. You had one chance to make that movie and you made it in the 70s when it could be made. You're never going to make a movie with a line like "Let Jesus fuck you." And if you don't understand why that scene is in the movie and what it's implying, well then you didn't understand the movie.
yeah, yeah. No,
Why
it's
does
something.
the guy, why would you leave a drunk movie director to watch your kid, your pubescent daughter? Okay, the movie is transparently about a thing that's very awkward to talk about. In the
Yeah,
same way, The Shining is about very similar subject matter. Part of my problem with modern Hollywood is they won't go to dark places. It's the horror genre. Dark places is where you have to live. And I'm not saying it has to be about childhood sexual trauma, because obviously, like, not every film should be that. And not every film from the golden eras of horror was that. But you have to be able to go to really dark places. Or if you're going to create fluff, modern fluff, just do that. Don't pay $400 million for the Exorcist series when you don't understand it.
no, the like I said, Bloom. I mean, I'm not a fan, but they had a good business model. I don't quite get that
And then they
decision.
gave it up.
They did, and I for no reason. I, I
So,
mean,
so uh,
$2 million, you can get a horror movie made. I mean, I know there's promotional costs on top and all that, but you could take so many shots at creating the next Exorcist, adapting some of these books out there, these thousands and thousands of books.
mhm.
If you just decided, we're not even taking new scripts, we're just going to adapt some of the books out there,
Oh,
you
you
would
have
have
200, you have 200 years of filming.
yeah, exactly. And you would be fine. There's
Yeah.
just so much. There's so
So
much out there.
this is ultimately a very,
Mhm.
very true comment, right? So The Exorcist works because it has stuff that's arguably commenting on culture and changes in society, but it's beating over your head. So here's the thing. A great movie doesn't allow its themes to become slogans. That's what, when people say things are woke and they mean that in some
And not
egregious way.
everything's not
So
everything's woke, and I know that.
the problem,
Yeah.
but even the tenets of what people call woke are not the problem.
No.
The thing is, storytelling can never come at the expense of the curtain. The curtain should come away when the play starts. If you're telling the story and you're basically walking out as the announcer and you're just telling people the story and how they should feel about things, you're not doing your job. Let the play out. The problem is when you have like the producer of Dracula come out to say you're going to watch something very scary. You better be able to give us a Lugosi level performance after that. We've been missing the second half of that. I don't have a problem with any message, any viewpoint, ever. The stuff I agree with, the stuff I disagree with, but who cares? I'm kind of schizophrenic. Who knows? If you can't actually focus on your story and have the themes reinforce the story, if the themes have to be just the main point, if you didn't get my point, you're lost. When I say that the studios don't understand The Exorcist, the problem isn't that they didn't put first and foremost, hey, this is a movie about two girls who were abused. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You have to find the conduit today into what kind of trauma would cause possession. There's a million ways to go with that. It doesn't have to be what the first film was about. The problem is it's a movie that the Believer is a movie that's full of slogans, and I don't give a shit about any of those characters or the situation.
Well, and then that solution at the end with all of the religions coming. It's like it's a Christian mythology.
It's a Catholic mythology. It's not even just that.
Yeah,
It's very,
Catholic
very,
mythology.
very specific. The fact that they're
really
they're paraphrasing the Roman ritual. It's like, oh, you guys didn't get this at all, did you?
No, it
yeah.
it
It's funny because I've said a million times, not that I don't talk politics on this channel, but I have a very libertarian soul. I'm open to any conversation that gets us closer to the truth.
Yeah.
Even if I disagree with it on face level, or until you explain your position to me. I might have a gut reaction. I'm not saying I'm not, but and film and art is a fine place to start those conversations, but you have to start it through the medium, and you have to respect the medium first. So if you want a movie to have great subtext, you have to first have text. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't care if something is woke. I don't know what's the difference. It doesn't really matter. If you entertain me, I'm down.
No, that word applies in some cases for sure. There's some really bad. I mean, broken record, but Black Christmas 2019. There's your there's your measuring stick for a woke movie. But that term could have been applied to a lot of classics that we love if you
absolutely.
really want to make it stick. So I don't know. There's, I think respecting your audience is a big thing in general. People aren't stupid. They really aren't. And I think they are willing to embrace some of these just great horror movies. It's mostly just getting them to watch it. That's the big thing. Getting people out of their comfort zones to explore, and there's just so much there.
I think one of the most critical things of art beyond say 1968. So I really think that there's a bunch of things that happened in 1968 that changes art or commercial arts fundamentally that year. The corruption being the point where I personally choose to put that dividing line. But the key to making something have resonance is to provide a really strong viewpoint, and then at a certain point, self-criticize that viewpoint. So what I mean by that is that you have to have a moment of doubt. Because if it's just a screed in any one direction, then it can be dismissed. So for me, something like Last House on the Left, the original film, works because the killers have that moment where they're disgusted with themselves.
Oh, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
if they don't
Great.
have that moment of remorse, it doesn't work. The whole movie fails. You can have the bumbling cop shit. That all can ultimately be forgiven. But if they were just mustache twirling villains and they didn't have that moment when they were that disquieting moment in the woods after they've killed Phyllis.
It's a great, I mean, just some great acting
Yeah.
in that scene, because yeah, they just like, what the fuck am I? You know, what, you
Yeah.
know, and I would imagine that some people like that do have that moment, you know, after doing something that awful. And it's not talked about a lot. I mean, a lot of people talk about the assault scene, the Keystone Cops, or you know, the dad chainsawing everything that's thrown at him. I mean, all great scenes, but I do think that's one of the more powerful
So
moments in that. Just that
I should
10
probably just
seconds, if
I
that.
should just do an autopsy on Last House at some point, but I'll break something very simple down. There's two halves of the movie. There's everything
Mhm.
before the killers get to the house, and there's everything after. And I'm going to break it
Yeah.
down to you. They're the same story. The first half is the same as the second. It's just perspective.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's what makes the film so brilliant, is that you have the story of these guys who kidnap these girls, take them to the woods, do horrific things, and then kill them. Remake notwithstanding. And then those guys end up in this house with these two other people. Motivations aren't really important, because what it's saying is, oh, you would justify torture and murder if the perspective you have meets your moral compass.
Hmm.
That's that moment of doubt that's so important to make this stuff work. It's it's just important that we not have a simple solution to a complex problem. And Craven always kind of said it was based on that he was inspired by Vietnam. I'm not sure if that really plays, but I can understand the moral dilemma of anyone looking at a conflict, a global conflict, whether it's Gaza today or Ukraine, and saying the problem here is you can make an argument for both sides. That's the real problem here. The world doesn't break down into purely good and bad. You can say, I think this happened and that was a horrible thing, but you're a fool if you think that everything that came afterwards was 100% justifiable. Because in those cases of extreme violence, there's always going to be oversteps, there's always going to be overreaches, and maybe you're cool with all of it. That's up to you. But the movie, art in general, should make you explore that morality and mortality. That's what horror genre is about. You can't have a truly great horror film if it doesn't explore both, unless we're going just into gallows humor. And in that case, I would argue the best horror comedy is outside the top 100 just straight horror films of all time, personally. But
No, I mean, usually my top 10 for the year, I mean, there's a lot of horror comedies I like, but if it's not something like really special and stand out, it usually doesn't make my list. I mean, we just lost Tony Todd, and I say it all the time. Candyman, I love that movie. There's not a stitch of humor in that movie. It's just like a fucking pure nightmare, and I love that so much about it. You brought up, you know, not to get too deep, but you know, the Ukraine, Gaza, all of that right now. I don't feel like there's a lot of filmmakers with the balls to tap into that, like we got the Vietnam wave of horror movies like Death Dream. I mean, I just think people are so on all sides just rooted in their positions that
right,
it's so hard to just
a
take
nuanced
advantage of
position
that
can't
for a
happen,
horror.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But
So
where's
if you
that
look at
horror movie that you would make that would somehow tie into
well,
Ukraine or
you know what
Gaza?
the interesting thing is, after 9/11, we had films that borrowed 9/11 imagery pretty rampantly about a year afterwards. Things like was
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds. But notice where it shows up. It doesn't show up in horror. It shows up in science fiction and in action and even in
Mhm.
straight dramas.
Yeah.
The horror genre was averse to going there. And And I think we're still in that kind of loop, whereas horror is afraid to attack too serious of topics, or at least global topics. We should have a world whereas like the serious problems of the time are addressed. That's what The Exorcist and The Shining did, by the way. The films, I'm saying, in both cases. Because I'd say the motivations of the film, both films, is a little bit different than the literary and novels that came before. But it's just, we seem to be in a moment where it's easier to simply reflect previous media, aka sequels and remakes, than it is to attack what's going on. I think you could make a home invasion film that really analogs the Gaza situation. And maybe that's just The Last House on the Left remake. I don't know.
I mean, there's so much you could
but you could do
do.
with it.
Yeah, I mean, because it's such a, I mean, so many people fucking suffering right now. It's so awful. But there is some fascinating stories that you could tell surrounding those situations. And I'll be honest, I'm racking my brain here. I mean, there've been horror movies that have kind of surface level, Middle East troubles, but there's nothing that I think has gone hard on like that type of situation. And again, that might just be fear because that movie would draw up a lot of controversy right now. But yeah, I think filmmakers just have to be more bold and not be afraid to piss people off.
You don't have to be so literal that you're presenting it visually on screen as what it is. Again, I think you could just make it. You could make a home invasion film that reflects either of those conflicts really well, or you know what? People are freaking out. We're freaking out for a year about a political contest that I'm so glad is over. I love throwing away my vote every 4 years on third-party candidates, but it's like, I don't even care which position you took. Take a position and tell a really compelling story with that as the backdrop. I'm good with that. At least you'll have a point of view. I look at stuff like a film like The Boogans, right? And you sit there and you say, well, what the fuck is The Boogans about?
I'll find out when I watch
it. So when you see it, you'll be like, kind of, if you look, you'll be like, oh my God, it is kind of about something. Or something like Humanoids from the Deep. It's a film about scaly monsters that rape women, right?
Yeah.
Well, sure it is. What else is the movie about? Well, something about weird Native Americans in the beginning of the movie. Yeah, might want to look at that. That's not incidental. What is My Bloody Valentine really about? Is it about a generation that was forced into extremely hard labor, looking down upon the next generation who are not?
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
it's also a slasher film, but there was a sense of time and place and conflict drawn from our real world embedded in it, and that's why it works. And I'm not even the hugest fan of that movie, but it works.
Yeah, it's still there. I mean, that's not high art, but that is still very much in the movie. Now I don't know. I don't see a lot of it. I really don't, which is shocking because right now there's just so much going on in the world and it's not really being reflected in movies again for the most part. And if you go outside the horror genre, certainly there's some examples, but that people are just afraid. They're afraid to tackle any of it. There's and if you try, you can get fucking buried.
but maybe we need to get buried.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
When did we become so adverse to controversy? I mean, isn't this the genre that was built on we dare you to watch this?
It's weird because I'll have this conversation with a lot of horror fans, and it's like there's so many that are afraid to feel uncomfortable. And like I like to go to dark places in my film. And by dark places, that's not just shock films or anything. It's say something like Hereditary,
maybe, how I feel about Hereditary.
Yeah, it can fucking wreck you. Like, some people more than others. Like, it's a
it
really
should.
heavy film. I mean, that
Hereditary and
scene with
Candyman actually share a lot in common.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
thing. Both films are about women who struggle with their perceived place in the world.
yeah,
And so you start with that and you tell very different stories, but it's when people feel like they have failed based on a social structure that says that you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to be successful and important. Wow, you can go to really dark places and you can exaggerate those fears in wonderful ways. And a film like Candyman and a film like Hereditary, which I would say in their respective decades are probably the best films produced.
yeah.
I mean, I don't think Candyman is even disputable. I kind of
I
don't think Hereditary is disputable either. But you have to start with a real world anxiety. You have to do this stuff right.
and
You
there's so
don't.
much of that out there right now. It's like there's so much to mine from.
I'm.
Um,
You know what? There is a bigger cultural divide in the generations today than there has been in 60 years between the Gen Zers and everyone else.
oh yeah,
It's a completely different moral sense. The willing the that thing how they think about working and living and their boundaries and how they want to be perceived is fundamentally different. I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying that's ripe territory. Someone needs to go there and do that. And I'd love it if it was someone from the younger generation because you know what? They probably have the strongest views on this.
oh yeah.
Um,
Once in a while, you get lucky, with satire. I mean, The Hunt, that was a lot better than I was expecting it to be.
that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, Hunt's great. But there, I mean, right now it's just there's so much. It's even I think whatever your opinion on stuff. I mean, the world's gonna look alien in 20 years. That might be good. That might be bad. But
I'll be
things are
dead by then. It
changing.
won't matter.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you'll be a cyborg. It's
No,
possible,
I don't
but
want that. Just I don't
but
need to breathe that much longer.
you look at something like Afraid, and I know you probably didn't see that the AI John Cho movie. I'm looking at that. I'm like, that is such a fascinating thing because I have access to some people that far more intelligent than me that are talking about this AI stuff like it's moving at an insane rate, and we're gonna be living in a sci-fi film if we're not already. And I look at that and I'm like, really? That is the best you could do with that concept, that
You,
dumbed
you,
down
dude,
slop.
dude. You know what the ultimate AI horror story is?
Are
What
we
if
talking literature or
no. I'm not talking about something that exists. I'm saying the possibility. The craziest thing is, what if AI just figures out the meaning of life and decides not to share it
what?
with us? That's the ultimate horror story. Like, oh, we figured it out, but it'd be wasted on you, so we're not telling you.
Oh yeah.
That's
No, that
the ultimate existential horror.
there is and I look at some of these podcasts where like in my head I feel like there's a big leap from AI becoming a threat. But then I'm seeing these like geniuses that are like, yeah, it's really fucking scary and it's not going to be long before it gets really fucking scary and we're all, you know, potentially
So
living
I
a
think
sci-fi
uh,
novel.
I don't. I'm not actually afraid of AI at all. But here's the thing: I think AI is going to create a world that's going to disrupt some social boundaries that um, is going to take some adjustment for all of us.
Hmm.
Money is the big one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, when you unleash AI's ability to look at vast amounts of data and come to simple conclusions, or even complex conclusions, once that's taking the place of like a state bank or the Fed,
Which it will.
it
I
will.
mean,
It will
yeah.
absolutely. Because why wouldn't you? At that point, I think we may become a post currency world. First society, then world. And the thing is, people would love to think this is science fiction that's going to happen in 100 years, 80 years. Yeah, if you haven't been paying attention, this stuff is happening fast.
Yeah, it is.
We may get to the point whereas the need for a social hierarchy based on wealth is irrelevant. And
I
maybe
mean,
there's
that's
still
where we go eventually.
maybe there's certain human reasons, human psychological reasons why people would want to keep it in place, but they won't be able to fight the progress of it. It'll creep into every aspect of our lives.
Oh,
Thing is, I don't fear machines because I fear people.
yeah.
People are far scarier than machines to me.
Some of it too, like there's a humorous aspect to it, like the sex bot stuff and all of this. Like, you laugh at that, but then it's like that could fundamentally change society. I mean, we're seeing it right now, I think, with a lot of younger guys, dating apps and all of that. And, some like it's gonna get to the point where why would they go out and start a family? Why would they go? I mean, there is a reason why you would do that, but uh I don't know that they're going to. And I don't know that the relationship between people, it's going to be so different and so weird. It's already getting weird. I mean, I was like just at that point where I can remember a time where the internet wasn't a big thing at all in my life. But, my nieces, my nephews, like they always had a device in their hand, and they're just so different now. Like I have a tough time relating to a lot because, I'd like to leave the house once in a while and wander and, read, go to the video store. And it's like now it's just all this,
Yep.
that device, and it's getting stranger and stranger.
So, JG, and you say that AI can't think, and the only thing I challenge you with there is what is thinking.
Yeah.
If you're saying it's spontaneous creation, then the problem with that is we are all based on the stimuli we receive. We're processing it and we're making decisions based on that. Is that so different than programming? Really? Is there a spark of intent that's born into biological creatures that wouldn't be made possible in machines? I worry that we're we're I don't know, we're weighing the scales to come to the outcomes we want on this subject. All I'm going to say is, if it's all doomed, it was all doomed with just humans too. It might
Mm.
just be faster with machines. But I don't think thinking is really the issue. I think it's more what kind of world do we want to live in? What are the sins that are going to be created to destroy some of the evils of the world? Because that's what we're talking about. Like people talk about all the time, like, oh well, ultra processed food is so bad. Yeah, and it's also it also has cut down on world starvation by half.
Yeah.
So we're there. So more people get fed because we overprocess food. So
That's
it's
kind of
fine.
an
It's fine from an
American.
American situation to be like, oh, the red 40 is killing us, and they're right. Red 40 is killing us, and it doesn't need
Mm.
to.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the person starving in a third world nation that actually has food because of the food industrial complex probably is not all that concerned with red 40. So the world's complex and simple answers are evasive. And I don't know.
Yeah. Not
I think,
worried about the carbs when you can feel your
right,
rib cage.
right. It's a world. Whereas I think if we want to see boogeyman, we can see boogeyman. If we don't want to see boogeyman, we are blind because there are really evil people out there.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I would rather spend my time being aware of. Machines are machines. They don't necessarily mean much to me. Um, because of work, I am tied to machines because of friendships. Like Dan and I have been in the same room on occasions, but less than you might think, right?
Yeah.
And yet I consider this man a brother. That doesn't happen without this technology.
Oh yeah, no, technology, if things move forward, technology is always going to move forward too.
Yeah.
It's hard to like pause that. And I mean, not that it can't destroy you, but if as long as things are keep moving forward, we're gonna uh, I don't know. I wish we had the flying cars. That would be
I don't think I
cool.
trust myself with a flying car. I'm kind of cool without the flying car.
I've watched some. I wish I would drop the link if I could remember, but some podcast at one point on the whole flying car thing and how it would never really work. But I still stick to it. Like flying cars would be great. I don't know how you would police it. I mean, there's a
Well, that's the
lot to
thing.
consider there, but
I once heard it said that every freedom we allocate to ourselves means we have to have another government agency to police that freedom. So
oh
you
yeah,
make yourself less free by creating more freedoms,
yeah.
and that sometimes just accepting that you live in a police state inside your own head is the best way to live because at least you're being honest about it.
There, the one thing that kind of scared me about the AI was like the again, I this might have been an Elon Musk thing, I can't remember, but the one AI program that was capable of lying to you and it wasn't programmed to do that. Like I hear something like now I hear something like that and I'm like,
Nah,
let's
well,
rewind a little bit. That's
but
probably not good.
we're not going to go back pre-internet. And so, I mean, the reality is we're here. Whatever. Listen,
Yeah.
listen. As a person who creates things that I hope people buy, it's a weird world because like I want to explore what I want to do, and I don't want to just create like mindless commercial dross. But at the same rate, like the reality is you got to sell this stuff. So people are like, well, AI is going to write scripts. Cool, let them. Because to be honest with you, I probably have something I can learn from them, but I also have probably something I can sell to them. It's
Mm.
all good. Um, People were worried, but believe me, people have been worried for all time about the new shiny technology.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I'm good. But besides, again, I don't have that much longer to roll around the planet. So it's if the next generation wants to create a hellscape for themselves, cool, dude. Have fun.
I I haven't experienced like an AI novel, uh, but I have seen through Todd and Pugs, AI can actually create real music.
Mhm.
I mean, I was a little bit shocked, and that's just in the last year. I've heard about it before then, but to actually see how that works, and it's like, well, I'll be damn, that sounds like a real song from a real artist, you know?
So I mean, let me ask this: like, if machines could create a perfectly non-biased, accurate form of journalism, would it be preferable to journalists who might be biased or influenced or even just use tragedies in their own lives to color their stories? Would you rather something that was pure and inhuman but accurate, but 100% accurate, or does that lose something fundamental about the human experience along the way? There's no good answer to this, by the way, because
Yeah.
it's a trap either way, and the world isn't absolute, so it's kind of a bullshit question. You're always going to have a gradation, but because either the machine is going to be influenced by something, or people are more honest than we think, or whatever.
I mean, there's also that question of what a machine's how it would grasp morality, you know. It, I don't know. The
Well,
journalism
there's
question
that.
is
That's
interesting.
always the question. Like, is if it is if you were to discover as a journalist, let's say, if you were to discover a government program that existed that's been exploiting people, but you knew if you exposed it, you were going to cause riots in the streets, and more people were going to die than were ever abused by this program. What is the moral
Hmm.
thing to do? To expose it or to bury it?
Yeah.
Now that's again, there's no real good answer to this. It's a thought experiment. But
Yeah.
but to bring this all back to the horror genre real quick, This is the kind of stuff I want the genre discussing. And again, I might not like the answer you come up with in your given art, but I'm going to be overjoyed to read it or to watch it or to listen to it because at least it has some real substance.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I there's so many great stories to be told as we march forward into this brave new world that hopefully better than the Huxley book. But I yeah, I hope people will tackle it. And again, I like a lot of crap. If you watch Flesh Wound Features, I mean, we cover a lot of like schlock, but I do feel a lot lacking. Also, the science fiction genre, as far as film goes, like how many a year do we get that really tackle some of this stuff in an intelligent way? I mean, that Afraid movie.
I got a bigger problem with sci-fi than that. And so from the 40s to the 70s, let's say, science fiction was looking at a world that didn't exist and creating that world for us based on where they thought human endeavor would take us. And it amazingly prophetic stuff.
Oh yeah.
Are you seeing anything today that actually looks like our scientific future in 30, 40, 50 years?
No, and
You get
that's
you because Star Wars came in and made science fiction relegated to fantasy.
yeah, and of
And
course we all knew it's not going to look like Star Wars.
no, because
So,
Star Wars looks like the fucking third century.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's just stupid. It's wizards within swords. It's I mean, yes, there's guns, but fuck. Okay, so maybe 7th century China is what it looks like. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of ridiculous.
I mean, I often like in my head I'm thinking like, okay, 20, 30 years cuz things are moving fast. I can't quite picture what it looks like. I mean, I don't have to go back very far post 9/11, and if you had asked me some of the stuff that's going on now, I would have said that sounds just ridiculous. Of course not. So I'm getting old enough now that I can see like it's a vastly different world than it was 10 years ago. And I do think it's moving faster now.
It
Uh,
is. It
so
is.
uh,
But I mean,
I
there's
don't
an
know.
untapped potential for great storytelling there.
Mm,
And I guess that's my complaint. My bitch session here is simply that I think we should be further along in storytelling than we are. And um, I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities that come out every year. Every film, every novel, every short story, every song should really feel like it belongs in the year 2024, almost 2025. And
mm,
unfortunately, most everything I see feels very retro, at least
yeah.
in the kind of insular American experience. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just me too. I'm not claiming my experience is anyone else's experience. We all see the world through our own lens, and it's all cool. But
It, it's funny that it's all 80s and 90s nostalgia too.
Jesus
Like
Christ,
I don't see anything like
the '80s sucked. People, stop.
it I don't know, that's just interesting to me. You don't see too much like let's go back to the golden time of 2007. And it's been a while since it's been 2007 now. uh
I just don't. I don't know. Like to be completely honest with you, like I think the horror genre was again. You know that I'm a '30s guy, right? So I think the horror genre was at its best when we were a barely industrial society. We hadn't fought the Second World War, so true horror hadn't descended yet. So we could go to the a really fantastical place for horror that still felt cozy and relatable. I think it's harder today to have that same impact as the as a Frankenstein or a Dracula or pick your Universal monster or pick your early '40s monster of choice with cat people. To have that level of resonance today um, is just it's tough.
it's hard, but like I mean, you can look at the chat right now, the AI thing. Like, I do think there's a lot of interest there. It's just you gotta go a little harder than something like Afraid that feels like it was made by early AI, like the whole script, everything.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
my problem with the AI trailer was just like, okay, so turn it the fuck off, take its power away. Aren't you done at that point?
yeah,
And I know that's reductive, right? I get that you want to tell a story, and stories are ultimately parables, so you have to accept a certain amount of artifice to tell a story. But when it's that basic, I just have an issue.
mm,
I can't buy into a story where the solution seems so glaringly obvious to me. First off, I wouldn't even have Alexa in my house, let alone like I'm gonna put a knob on every wall that's gonna see and hear everything. Like, who's
yeah,
doing that? A basic rule I have in my fiction, and I think should be a rule for every fiction, is if your hero is dumb enough to create the situation that bites them on the ass, then they deserve to be bitten on the ass. And you can't get an audience to feel sorry for them be get bitten on the ass. So if you put that shit up in your house,
it's weird because I have family that does that. I got that as a gift once. It's like, oh, it's so awesome. You can just tell it to play songs, and I was like, I can just do that. Like maybe it takes me like 5 seconds more, but I don't need this weird thing. It's like, well, it'll tell you the weather. I can hit two buttons on my phone and see what the fucking weather
you can
is.
you can look out the fucking window to tell if you need an umbrella. Why?
Yeah,
One thing that drives me nuts is people want more information than they ever need. Oh, there's a cold front coming in from Illinois. Why do you give a fuck?
yeah,
No,
yeah,
honestly, like what you should care about is, do I need a coat when I walk out the door? Should I bring my umbrella? Like
yeah, yeah,
this idea that endless amounts of knowledge about something that's ultimately esoteric, right? By the time the weather gets you, it probably has changed anyway. So why are you watching the Weather Channel for fucking an hour? It doesn't make sense. I don't know.
yeah.
That's a
The fact
human
that they're
failing that's
so
has nothing to do with technology. It's just
yeah.
that desire to be informed on a subject that's ultimately irrelevant.
The fact that there's a weather channel in general was always kind of wild to me. I mean, I guess, with the natural disasters that
Well,
happen
it's
and
a
everything, there's, coverage
I,
for that, but
I've always said like Weather Channel should be a camera outside your house, like
yeah.
right outside your house. That's all you need. Oh, look, it's sunny today.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
what's the practical application of anything else? I mean, I get like snowstorms, and I get like in some areas of the country maybe that's intense. But
yeah,
also, if you're living in a place where you get in Montana, you kind of signed up for intense.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, there's I just never when it gets like really interesting. I mean, again, I would have a flying car because that's really cool. I don't need that little machine on the wall. My dad has one. My dad get like any of that stuff. He just automatically gets it. And I don't see any purpose. It's just an eyesore. And I don't have wall space, as you can tell.
Yeah,
So it's like I don't need that. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe when Alexa's, walking around looking like Veruza Balk, like I'll bite, but it's got to make that next jump for me uh to be that interested in it. I don't want it to make me lazy. Like that's the one thing I kind of worry about younger people now that never leave the house. I just think they're missing that they won't process it, but they're missing something vital to being human. Just going on a hike, being out in nature. I think that's in our DNA. You need that once in a while. And that really kind of scares me, is what a human being looks like, 100 years from now. Because I don't know, it might be unrecognizable. Yeah, I don't know that we would look different in 100 years, but it's
I'm not gonna find out, so it doesn't matter.
uh,
At that
but
point, I think that's where we got to leave it. But I'm gonna say,
yeah.
everyone, please enjoy your ultra processed food for Thanksgiving, and don't think about the machines playing the music when your relatives ask it to play some Christmas songs.
Yes, yes. And if you're around tomorrow, Black Friday, we're covering all of that, and then we're doing two very well, no, actually I will say Poultrygeist is a lot of fun. It's a great
I love
satire.
Poultrygeist.
Yeah, Poultrygeist is, there's more to it than you think if you haven't watched it. And we're gonna watch that, and definitely not a smart horror film, Home Sweet Home from 1981.
Oh no,
The
not
Body
smart.
by Jake slasher movie.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
Excellent. All good uses of your time. In the meantime, please hold the people that matter to you close. And if you know someone who's in some pain, going through some hard shit, tomorrow would be a great day to reach out to them and let them know you care.
Yes.
Meantime, watch Biozombie. It's an amazing film. Pick up the Blu-ray when it's on sale in a couple hours, or at least check out the YouTube stream if you do watch along with us today. Amazing film, amazing era in horror films. Have a great one, guys. On made it work. And Hollywood said, okay, we can do it.
You okay, buddy?
Yeah.
You okay?
Oh,
who said witchcraft doesn't work?
I'll be back in a moment.
That's concerning.
That was a Blair Witch ending right there.